Hello and welcome back to the next episode of the 6 months of silver clay with me, Emma Roy, in partnership with Kernowcraft. I'm very excited today because I'm going to be showing you all about silver clay syringe. So today I'm going to show you how to make your own syringed earrings with silver clay. We're going to make a frame around these earrings to make them nice and strong. I'm also going to show you how to make little embellishments and how you can fill those embellishments with a little pop of colour with some alcohol ink. So what are you going to need for this exciting project? Well, you are going to need some Art Clay Silver 999. You're going to need Art Clay Silver Syringe and a green tip. You can have a thinner tip if you want a finer line, but I think green tip to start with is a really good way to go. You're going to need some Teflon. You're going to need some playing cards or spacers. You're going to need some cutters or a template and a needle tool. You're going to need some dotting tools. Now, if you watched a previous episode, you'd have seen me using these. You're going to need your roller. You're going to need a little bit of alcohol ink, your choice of colours. They come in lots of different colours and you can get these from stationery shops as well. A little bit of water in a spray bottle. Some release agent. I have here some olive oil on a sponge. You're going to need something to sand with. And if you want to have texture around your frame, a texture, I'm just going to use wallpaper. It's one of my go-to favourites. I have a healing tool here just to smooth the edges of our piece as we're working. And I also have some of these. Now these are embeddables. They are fine silver and they are safe to use in the silver clay, safe to fire. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these as a way to have a little hook on our earrings so they can hang beautifully, just like this. So let's get cracking. I forgot to also mention you will need something to dry your clay with. I like to use a little heat pad here and also all of your firing equipment, your torch, your fire brick, something to quench your water, your things in, and some goggles. So just remember all of the things that you've needed previously. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to add a little tiny bit of olive oil to your Teflon, to your roller, and if you're using any textures, a little bit to your texture that we have here. And the first thing we're going to do is make our frames. Now the frames are what's going to basically make this a really strong piece. So we're going to make two sets like this. So they're going to sandwich together and the syringe is going to sit inside, which will basically make it really nice and strong. Because the syringe is so fine that this way it just adds that strength to your pieces. So there's one I made earlier, but we need another one because obviously we're making a pair of earrings, so we need two lots of those. If you want to make a pendant, for example, you can make this a little bigger and then you only need one set. That's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to roll down my clay, and because we are sandwiching the two sides together, we don't need it very thick. So just be mindful that it's going to be a bit more fragile when it's in its greenware stage. So I'm going to get rid of my 4 cards thick cards and I'm going to stick to the 3 cards thick. A little roll, and then I'm going to texture. And remember, we roll once with conviction with a texture. And we only need to texture one side because we're going to cut it out and we're going to stick the other sides together. So only one side needs to be textured. And if you want to use cutters, you can use cutters at this stage. But I'm going to be using this template. So I'm just going to double check to make sure I've got matching because, well, you might want asymmetrical earrings. That's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to go round. Let's see if I can get 2 out of this, which I can not quite. Okay, so I'll just do 1 for now. And I'm going to do the middle. And you want enough cut out in the middle that you've got enough space for the syringe to go on the inside in between the two layers. And don't forget, we are also putting an embeddable into this, so you need to make sure you've got enough room for the embeddable to sit in. So if I just grab an embeddable out of the pack. So the embeddable, once it's dry, is going to be sitting in there, so you need to make sure you've got enough space for that to happen. So I'm just going to move that. And then I'm going to pop my circle on to dry. If you are using templates, a little top tip, sometimes when you're cutting them out, they go a little bit misshapen. So what you can do is just get it, move all your stuff out of the way first. That helps. And just give it a little wiggle like that, so it fits nicely. And then I'm just going to pop that one to dry, and I'm going to make another one exactly the same. So I have 4 little circles with the circle cut out for my pair of earrings. So whilst the circles are drying, I'm going to make a few little embellishments. And on these, as you can see, I have added a little tiny like bowls almost, where you can add a little pop of colour. I'm hoping you can see that on the camera. Let's see if I can hold that up close for the camera for you to see. There we go. So with this, there you go. Look, you can see the little pop of colour that we've got in there. And you can use any colour that you like, really. I'm a blue girl, I like blues, so that's why I added a little bit of blue. So we're going to make some little bowls, and these are super easy, and I love these. They just add a little bit of interest. So it's very simple. All I'm going to do is take a pinch of clay. Now I'm going to make this quite a large one for you to be able to see on the camera, but you can make these any size you like. So I'm going to just take a little pinch of clay, and I'm going to roll it into a ball. And then I'm going to take these. Now these are great because they come in lots and lots of different sizes. So I'm just going to take one of these, they're actually dotting tools, and I'm going to make a little indent, and there we go. As you can see, we can put that on my finger for you to see. I've made like a little bowl. Now I'm going to make a few of these in different sizes, and I'm also going to make some little balls as well. So just to add a little bit of interest to my piece. And of course, if you want other embellishments, you can use the little tiny molds like we used in the last episode. If you wish, make it your own. So I'm just going to make a few of these. What you can even do is actually dry them in the little middle of the circles, because they stop them rolling around, because they do have a tendency to go shooting off. And I'm going to make a small one here, so I'm just using a smaller end of the dotting tool just to make these little round. And I'm not worried it's facing the wrong way right now, that's fine. It just flipped itself over as I put it onto the dryer, onto the Teflon. Ooh. And to make the balls, we're literally just rolling them up. You might feel more comfortable doing this in your fingertips. I find that quite a challenge, so I tend to use the palm of my hands. It's all okay unless you've got very dry hands. You have to work with really moist clay. So if your clay is looking a little bit too dry at this stage, you will have to refine it by using some cling film and a little bit of water. So if when you're making your embellishments, your clay starts to crack and it just kind of disintegrates, which you obviously don't want, what we're going to do is just add a little bit of more moisture into that binder. So I've rolled my clay up into a ball. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my finger. Don't squirt the clay directly. If you do that, you're going to be folding it for the whole afternoon. So just a little bit on your finger until it glistens. And we're just going to fold it. And basically what I'm doing is folding that water back into that binder. And when you're making these balls, you can actually afford to make your clay a little bit more moist than you normally would, a little bit more tacky, because it is going to be rolled up, especially if you do have hot hands. I'm just going to pick off a little bit of the clay. As you can see, it's much wetter. It's all on my fingers. So it's much wetter, much easier to work with, and it's nice and smooth and no cracking. So if you do start to get cracks, that's how you can get away with it. So make another little, oh, it's a little bit thin. There we go, that's the thicker one. And as you can see there, look, the little dish is nice and smooth. I'm just going to pop those on to dry. So once everything is dry, the next stage is to refine our pieces. Now, as always, refining is super important. It's one of the most important things to get that really nice, smooth, perfect finish to your work. So we're going to obviously not refine off the texture, but I'm going to straighten these up because, you know, they're a little bit wonky, and that's fine. They probably will be to start with. So I'm going to actually put them together, and I'm going to use a toothpick just to basically very gently go around, and I am sanding the inside of the circles. You can also use a needle file as well if you feel that you want to. Then I'm going to just take my fine and medium grits. I'm going to go for the medium first. I'm just going to round these off. What I would suggest is, because you want them to match up, so if you do it together, hold them together, then you should theoretically have them so they are then matching up and refine the same. Don't worry if they're not exact, because when we get to the sandwiching of them, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a layer of paste, a layer of syringe around the join. So you're not going to see the join. So if it's not exact, don't worry, it's fine. So, and you might want to take a little paintbrush, clean paintbrush, and just brush off the dust as well, because we don't want any dust when we get to the working with the inside. So I'm just going to grab, this is just a makeup brush I like to use, just brush off the dust. And you're going to repeat on the other one. A little top tip with seeing if it is dry: if you place your pieces straight from the hot plate onto a mirror, if it leaves a little like condensation mark, a little sweaty mark, it's not dry. So pop it back on for a little bit longer, because if you try and refine it before it's dry, it won't work. It will go soggy and it will bend and it will break basically. So it has to be completely dry. I'm just going to use the fine one, and I'm just going to refine until I'm happy with the outcome. And like I said, I'm not going to refine off that texture because I want to keep that texture on the outside of my pieces. And the underside, I'm not too worried about, because I'm going to be sandwiching it together, so no one's going to see the underside of it. So, and with the embellishments, they're so tiny, I'm not going to sand or do anything with those. They are as they are, and if they're an organic feel to them, then that's fine. I'm not going to sit there and sand tiny elements, because they will just crumble. So there we go. So I'm really happy with that. So the next thing is the syringe. So this is where it starts to come together. So this is Art Clay Syringe. Sometimes you can get them with tips. Sometimes you have to buy the tips separately. So I would suggest using the green tip for this project, because it's quite a nice depth when it comes out. You can also cut the tip of your syringe if you want to make it thicker, but you can also buy finer syringes too. But for this project, I've used the green syringe. And so I've turned my sanded circles up so the texture is on the back and the texture is face down onto my Teflon, because obviously I don't want to add syringe onto my texture. So I'm going to add it to the bottom. And I tend to hold my syringe like this. So in the kind of palm of my hand, like this, because I feel I've got more control, and I'm resting it on the table. I'm resting my forearm on the table too. And I'm going to hold my piece, and I'm going to literally, first of all, add a little bit of water. It's dried, so I'm going to add a little bit of water just around the edge of one of the frames. Not too much, but just enough so the syringe will stick. Now you may wish to draw out a pattern on some tracing paper, or even on some paper, and lay your Teflon underneath this. If you wanted a particular pattern, you could do that and follow the syringe. I'm just going to go for it and go a little bit natural and organic. So I'm going to literally just see where the syringe takes me. First of all, I'm going to push it out and I'm going to tap down and go across. Now it's really important that that syringe line goes all the way across your piece, like so. So you want them touching both ends because you need that good connection. And I'm going to go again. And I'm going to go again. As you can see, I'm doing from one side of my frame to another. You can do this as random as you like. Okay. And then I'm going to attach the embeddable. So I'm going to just add a little tiny squidge of paint there, of paste there, and stick the embeddable in. You can use tweezers to pick these up. Sometimes I use a little just wet paintbrush if it works, which it's not doing today because I'm filming. So I'm going to just push it in place. And because they're quite long, these earrings are quite small. The size circle that I used was about 20 mils. It's quite small. You can make them whatever size and whatever shape you wish. So, but just make sure, because the clay will shrink, obviously during firing, but your embeddable won't. So you want to make sure that you've got enough space to allow for shrinkage for that to be able to stay in place. And then I'm just going to add a few dots to where I've got lots of lovely clay sticking out on here, so I think it'll be okay. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to the lid, to the top bit. Again, this is not the textured side. The textured side's on this side. I'm adding water to the untextured side. And then I'm going to very gently pop it over the top. Give it a little wiggle and a little squish. You want to really be careful not to damage these lines. Now, if you're piping your syringe, I'm going to just do a little tester here, and it's not quite where you want it, just take a little wet paintbrush. This is obviously when it's in the frame, but you can move it very gently. So if when you're making these framed lines, if it didn't go exactly where you want it, especially if you're following a pattern, you can manipulate it with a little paintbrush just like that. Now I've got some excess around the edge, so I'm just going to move that into my paste pot. I'm just going to take some water. I'm being really careful not to knock any of this in the middle. It's really important, because if you do, your whole design is you have to redo it basically. I'm just going to basically take a wet paintbrush, and all of the bits that have squidged out, I'm just flattening down around the edges for the moment. And I'm just going to then leave it. I'm not worried too much about any of the edges. I'm just going to leave that like that to dry. So that will go back on the dryer, and then I'll do the other side. So once everything is dry, it has to be completely dry, because if you start to mess around with it and your syringe is still a little bit wet inside, you will find that it will break. Well, she says from experience. So my one here is completely dry. The other one's not so much yet. The second one I did, so that's drying. So what I'm going to do is I'm just checking all of the edges. And as you can see, I can see here that it's not connected brilliantly. So I'm going to take my syringe. Little top tip about the syringe as well. When you're not using it, pop it back in your pack with a baby wipe or a little bit of wet paper towel and seal it back up again, because you don't want that drying out in the tip. So keep it nice and kind of like, sealed. So I'm just going to take the syringe and I'm going to pipe syringe around the edges a little bit at a time. I'm going to do all of it, just little sections after sections. And I've got some water here on my mat. And what I'm going to do is take this syringe that I've just piped and tap it down into the join where those two frame edges were joining. And I'm just going to smooth it. I actually like to use my finger for this as well. So just think it works much better. And as you can see now, I'm just smoothing it down. And the more you can do at this stage, the less you're going to have to refine it. And actually that's a good thing because this is very, very fragile. And I'm being very, very mindful. I'm not touching that middle section with that syringe because, again, if I can put my finger through that, and I have done in the past. So, you know, you don't want to be doing that. So I'm just going to keep going all the way around with the syringe until I'm really happy with how that is looking. Really smoothing those edges, because what's going to happen, it will look like it's one seamless piece. You won't see that it's two pieces that are stuck together. And if you do have any gaps on the inside, you can do the same. You can add a little tiny bit of syringe, a little bit of water, and just seal up those joins for it to look seamless. And I'm going to repeat this on the other earring as well once it's dry. So once your frames have all been dried and you've refined all the edges and they're looking all nice and smooth, it's time to add the embellishments. You may wish to have a little bit more sanding if some of the frames around them are needing it, that's fine. You can also use a baby wipe just to smooth off any last bits and pieces. If you do use a baby wipe, pop it back to dry before doing the next stage. So here we go. So here's our piece. All of the edges are nice and smooth. I'm really happy with how it's looking, and now I'm going to add our little embellishments. Now I'm going to use 3 little embellishments. I like the power of 3. It's entirely up to you how many you use. And all we're going to do is add a little bit of water over here. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water where I want my embellishments to go. And I'm going to add a little bit of syringe. Just a tiny bit. Then I'm going to pick up the embellishments and place it down. I tend to put them in the water a little bit just to get them so they are wet. Now this is tricky because sometimes they do fall where you don't want them, so I tend to use a paintbrush just to move them gently into place. You don't want to be putting any pressure on that syringe really because it is fragile. And you might find your embellishments go wherever they want, and you might not want them there, so you might have to move them around. Come on. And I'm just going to do the same with the other 2. So these are my little bowls that is going to have the alcohol ink inside them. Again, I'm going to have one here. And the good thing is with the embellishments, if you've got an area that's not quite joined or you're not quite happy with it, you can pop an embellishment over the top and hide it. It's just great. And also that will act as a little bit of extra strength for you too. So not only will it hide it, but it will also add as strength, which is always good. So I'm going to add just a little bit here. I'm gently tapping down with my paintbrush, and very, very, very gently, just to make sure that's secured in place, because we do want it secured in place. Obviously, we don't want to put too much pressure on that syringe, but we don't want our embellishments popping off either. So I'm just using a little bit of water to seep into that syringe just to stick it in place. And then one more. And then I'm going to do the same on the other earring once that one's dry. So see where this one's gone right in the middle, which is really helpful. There we go. It's the only thing when you've got holes for it to fall into. Use my syringe. Too easy to pick them up. Careful when you're getting them wet, because they can be a bit squidgy. Come on. So I just crushed that one, so I'm just going to get another one. I tend to make a few spares for that very reason. So, but that's okay. That can be just made into paste or reused again. So it's fine, but I just got a fresh one. Okay. go. That looks a little bit like a face now. That wasn't my intention, but bit of a Picasso look going on. So there we go. So I've got my little bowls for my alcohol ink to go in once it's fired, and my embellishments. Now I'm going to pop this to dry because again they need to be completely dried before we fire, and while this is drying I'm going to do the same again on the other earring. So once our pieces are all constructed and you've done all the refining, we're just going to take one last check. We're going to check back and front. We just want to make sure that everything is attached securely and everything is refined exactly as we want it to be before we fire. Now from the back angle you might see that some of your embellishments need a little bit of reinforcing, so add a little bit of syringe just to the back and some water just to make sure that's all reinforced and nice and in place. And then when you're happy, just pop them back onto dry if you've used any water, and then it'd be time for firing them. So I'm just literally tidying that up there, and I'm happy with how it looks on the front. I'm happy with how it looks around the sides. And that one is now ready for firing. I'm just popping that to dry, and I'll do the same with the other side. So once they're all dry, they're ready for firing. So safety first, I've got my goggles ready. I've got my fire block. I've got my heat-proof surface. I've got my torch all filled up, ready. It's just a butane torch here. So I'm going to take my pieces and I'm going to pop them on. Now I can fire the two together. I'm going to put them relatively close together, and I'm going to make sure that the flame is going around both of them and evenly spaced. So what's going to happen is it's going to catch fire. It's meant to, that's the binder burning away. And then what will happen is it will start to glow. And it's really important that when you're firing silver clay, including the syringe, you do this in a darkened room because you need to see that glow changing on your piece. And when it gets to a beautiful salmon colour glow, that's when you're going to start timing. So for the project this size, I would time it for about 3 minutes to make sure that it's sintered properly. So let's get cracking. So here we go. I'm going to just light my torch. I'm gently moving my torch around at 45-degree angle. That's really important, 45 degrees. And there's the flame. Nice big flame. And to start with, it will go white. And then it will start to glow. Here we go. Here's that lovely glow. If it starts to get like little flashes of silver on your pieces, then it's too hot, so move your torch slightly away. You will see it shrink as well, which is really cool. And if it starts to glow cherry red again, it's too hot, so then move back. Just moving my torch to make sure they're evenly glowing beautifully for the 3 minutes. Obviously, health and safety, when you're firing, make sure that you've got children and animals out of the way, and all flammables out of the way too. It's good to have a practice. You can see they're shrinking already, starting to get a little warm, so I'm just moving back a little bit. I'm kind of directing the torch underneath the pieces. About a minute to go. And you can't overfire, so if in doubt, you can fire for a little bit longer, just not hotter. looking good. We're almost there. And there's actually really not very much clay here because the syringe is quite thin, and even though the frames are thicker together, there's not very much of it. So 3 minutes should be absolutely fine. Obviously, if you've got a thicker, bigger piece, if you've made this into a pendant, for example, then you may wish to do it for a little bit longer. And there we go, that's about 3 minutes. At this point, they are very, very hot. Obviously, they've just been fired. So we won't be touching them with our bare fingers, but I am going to just quench it. These are reverse action tweezers, and I'm going to drop it in some cold water, which is what the quenching is. Now, if you've added stones, I know we haven't covered that yet, I promise we will. If you have added stones into your pieces, do not quench them. They will go into thermal shock. But these do not have stones. So this is now pure silver. So I've just taken them out of the water and I've just dried them with a paper towel. And now I'm going to brush them up. They are white just because all of those molecules of silver are standing to attention. You can see how much they've shrunk. But they are, I promise you, pure silver. So all I'm going to do is take my wire brush and I'm going to brush it up. You can use steel brush, which is a little bit more abrasive, or you can use a brass brush and some soapy water. And I'm just brushing this up now, just to make it lovely and shiny. And the more you brush, the shinier it's going to get. So this one. Getting into all of these little crevices. And then I'm going to take, careful as well, these are quite sharp, so the bristles do tend to be a bit sharp, so just be careful when you're doing that. Then I'm going to take my burnisher. You may use an agate burnisher if you wish, or you might want to use a metal burnisher. And I'm just literally scraping around the edges to really make those edges pop. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around until I'm happy. Now, inside these bits, what you can also use, these are multi-purpose, these tools. I love a good multi-purpose tool. You can use the finer ones, like this, to really get into the little edges as well. And in the inside detail of all of your syringe. So I tend to use this just to burnish and make all of that beautifully shiny. I'm going to keep going until it's really lovely and shiny and I'm happy with the effect before I start to add my alcohol ink. So now they're all shiny and looking good. I've burnished all around the edges on the back and the front of my pieces. It's now time to add a little bit of alcohol ink. Now you can mix this with a little bit of UV resin to set it. These ones haven't been because they're so tiny. It will just pool into that little bowl and it will sit there lovely. So you don't necessarily need to, unless you want to, of course, which will make it last a lot longer. So I'm just going to add a tiny drop of the alcohol ink. This is called Sailboat Blue, if you're interested in what colour I'm using. So I'm going to add a little tiny drop, and I'm just going to take a toothpick. I'm literally just going to take a little bit and drop it into my bowls. And it kind of gives a almost enameled effect without having to enamel. You want to do this a few times. You can also take a very, very fine paintbrush as well if you wish. Or if you're feeling really, really, there we go, you can see. And because the silver clay is porous, it will soak in nicely. If you're feeling very adventurous, so I was going to say, if you're feeling really adventurous, you might want to just drop it in like that. But obviously the risk of doing it that way is it can overspill a bit. that you can wipe off the excess. So I've got a little blue detail into my piece. I'm going to do the other side. This was the one that looked like Picasso's face with the eyes. I added an extra ball in the hope to balance it out, but I don't think it did. And there we go, there's one. And I'm going to do the same to this side. And I'm just going to put it dry. In fact, actually that's soaking in quite nicely now. And have fun with this. You might want to have lots of different colours. A little rainbow of them. So there you go. So there are the two. Hope you can see that. There and there. And then what I'm going to just do is take these pre-made ear wires and I'm going to open them up like so. And then I'm going to just feed it through, feed the little eyelet through, close them. I picked up the wrong pliers, that's not good, is it? Let me grab the proper pliers. Flat ones would be easier. There we go. And there we are. That's one of our earrings. Syringe and a little bit of pop of colour for you. I'm going to do the other earring. Up. It's better when you use the right tools. Squeeze it through. And there we go. So there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please do subscribe to the channel and like and let me know if you have any comments or if you have any questions about anything today or anything about silver clay. Please do drop us a note. I'd love to know, and I will be doing a Q&A in the last episode, so it would be really great to hear from you if you have any burning questions for me to answer. Please share our pieces as well. If you've made any of the pieces throughout the series, please do share, tag me and tag Kernowcraft. We would absolutely love to see it. Thank you so much for joining me and wishing you all the best. Take care. Bye bye.